Twilight is full of throwaway comments and asides, and none is more striking than the casual mention of the world's real werewolves. Throughout the books, Bella and Jacob, along with the reader, assume Jacob is the world's version of the werewolf. The idea of a pack who works together, retaining their minds but still taking on wolfish characteristics, was original at the time, until Edward revealed, much to the confusion of Jacob, that the so-called werewolves aren't werewolves at all, but shapeshifters who could have ultimately taken the form of any beast. While this piece of lore could have been introduced in a smoother manner, I'm nonetheless intrigued by it. The introduction of more traditional werewolves to the saga not only opens the doors for a spin-off featuring these creatures, but raises the big question: what else is out there? If Edward neglected to tell Bella there were standard, full moon-fueled wolf people tearing around, what other creatures could he have glossed over? The werewolves, or what the vampires refer to as the children of the moon, are more traditional, losing their minds at the full moon and passing their infection on with a bite. However, like the vampires, some of the characteristics outlined in classic myths are fabrications, designed to make the humans feel like, to put it into Edward's words, they have a sporting chance. Before we continue, I'm Riley and this is Otherworldly Fiction. On this channel, I discuss fantasy books, talk about lore and characters, share bookish opinions, and offer the occasional writing advice. If any of that sounds like your cup of blood, hit that subscribe button. Posts are on Fridays. The werewolves, or children of the moon, as they're described in the books and the Twilight companion book, are fairly traditional as far as werewolves go, but they have some key differences from their legends. The biggest difference, of course, is in their weaknesses. Just as vampires are immune to sunlight, garlic, and crosses, so too are werewolves immune to silver. It affects them no more than any other metal. Instead, a werewolf's weakness lies with the moon itself. While a werewolf gains great power from transforming, he or she also loses their mind. Werewolves have their disadvantages when compared with the shapeshifters. The shapeshifters retain their minds, learn to work together, and while they can be dangerous to those they love, they're mostly safe for humans to be around, provided they exercise their self-control. On the other hand, werewolves also have an advantage over the shapeshifters. While transformed, regardless of being mindless beasts, they are as strong as vampires. Conversely, shapeshifters typically have to coordinate. A lone shapeshifter would be killed in a one-on-one fight with a vampire. But if a vampire is cornered by a single werewolf, there's a good chance they could lose. As a result of the threat werewolves pose to vampires, the Volturi nearly wipe them out. The saga never confirms if they are completely extinct or not, but the mere mention of them has me believing that there are likely a handful of survivors, especially since James actually hunted one down at one point. In my opinion, it is possible the werewolves are simply building their numbers, keeping a low profile, and biding their time. If they're anything like vampires, they'll be craving vengeance against the Volturi. Moreover, if you've watched my previous videos, you'll know that's a loose end for me. Whether it be Renesmee's story or a spin-off following a new character, I don't believe we've seen the last of Arrow and his crew. Plenty of people, members of the own Volturi included, have a bone to pick with the supernatural lawkeepers, and with Arrow himself. Furthermore, it's only mentioned that most of the werewolves were wiped out across Europe and Asia. Given there is no mention of Africa, Antarctica, or Australia, who's to say a budding army of werewolves isn't biding their time on another continent? The Volturi have also placed the werewolves into the role of the oppressed, killing them without trial and forbidding any vampires, likely on pain of death, from fraternizing with them. I don't know about you, but that already sounds like the perfect plot for a YA novel. A vampire meets a werewolf, falls in love, and then has to protect her love, not only from the mistrust of the other werewolves, but from the Valkyrie, who will surely kill her simply for caring about a fellow person. Such a book comes with relevant themes, such as forbidden love, prejudice, and the fight of good versus evil. And frankly, I'm wondering why Meyer, having introduced such information, doesn't build on it. As for a werewolf's appearance, it is more human-like. Their gait described as being closer to that of an ape than the shapeshifters. Given the Valkyrie's misgivings towards the shapeshifters, there are obviously enough similarities that they can be confused, if for a moment. But nevertheless, the Children of the Moon look more like your classic werewolf, taking an upright stature than they do normal wolves. Contrary to popular belief, werewolves, or the Children of the Moon, are also loners. While they might run during their transformation with a mate of sorts, seeking out another wolf of the opposite gender, they don't travel in packs. Disconnected from their minds, they are little more than animals. As with vampires, a werewolf's curse is transmitted through their bite. If they have any children, they, unlike shapeshifters or even vampires who find human partners, do not pass on their genes. One can only become a werewolf by being bitten, not through inheritance. Plus, werewolves can't breed while transformed. Even if they run with a partner come the full moon, they must wait until they are in human form to attempt conception. What's less clear is what happens once a werewolf becomes pregnant. Does their stomach simply disappear temporarily? Or, as seems more likely, do they stop full transformations during the full moon? This is one of those questions the author still has yet to answer. As for their relationship to vampires, werewolves are on equal footing. Plus, once a person has been bitten and made into a werewolf, they become immune to vampire venom. This immunity is complete. Not only are werewolves safe from transforming into vampires, but they are also safe from the venom's ill effects. Unlike the shapeshifters, for whom the venom is a natural poison. Where the venom might kill a shapeshifter, if he is greatly hurt, a werewolf is protected. Werewolves are a natural threat to vampires, and part of the Valkyrie's vendetta against them stems not only from this threat, but from the fact one of its leaders, Caius, was nearly killed by one. Even 2,000 years later, Caius is still terrified of the creatures, and nursing a great hatred towards them. The Children of the Moon move with an uprightness where the shapeshifters simply resemble extra-large wolves, and while they lose their minds, they retain the use of their hands, complete with thumb and finger usage. Their arms also grow larger than their legs, making them more top-heavy and further boosting their upper body strength. In conclusion, not much is known about the Children of the Moon, aside from the fact they are the Twilight Saga's real werewolves, and immune, contrary to myth and legend, to silver bullets or silver in general, changing at the full moon, losing their minds, infecting people with a bite, and moving with an upright gait. The Children of the Moon are, for the most part, the kind of werewolves we're familiar with. Unlike with vampires, Meyer has actually changed their canon little, though the inclusion of their history and their relationship with vampires leaves the door open for a gripping spin-off featuring the monsters. Why else would she throw this fact out there, if not to leave people wondering? There are so many mysteries to address. First, if a vampire falls in love with a werewolf, would they rebel against the Valkyrie, who seriously need their comeuppance? Second, what happens when a werewolf becomes pregnant? And third, how many are actually left? Are they thriving on other continents? Do they have an army? Or are they simply laying low? The introduction of such lore raises interesting questions, as well as the possibility of new stories in the Twilight universe. As noted before, a book where a prosecuted werewolf falls in love with a vampire, and where both fight against prejudice for the sake of retaining their freedoms, and against a corrupt government no less, has all the trappings of a classic YA hit. Whatever Meyer's reasons for introducing the idea of the Children of the Moon, or Twilight's real werewolves, I can only hope it was more than I was bored and wanted to spice things up. This addition to the canon, however small or inconsequential it may be, has a lot of potential for me, especially as it ties into the loose end of the Valkyrie, and the defeat they're primed to face down the road. And by this point, people are likely interested in seeing the world outside of Bella and Edward. The world Meyer has created, with its still living villains, variety of psychic gifts, and various characters, leaves me wanting more, if only because there is so much untapped potential. The fact that Edward just threw the name out there so casually also opens up the possibility, for me at least, that there could be other creatures besides the werewolves who have been prosecuted for their differences or the threat they present. There could be wizards, fairies, or other shapeshifters. Who's to say? The other continents are largely unexplored. Whatever the case, a book where the vampires, shapeshifters, werewolves, and possibly other paranormal beings team up to kill off the Valkyrie sounds like a great read to me, especially if you throw in a forbidden vampire-werewolf romance, some angst, and a pissed-off Marcus, who decides to finish off Arrow as he flees, given that little-known fact that Arrow killed Marcus's mate and didn't tell him. There are loose ends in the Twilight Saga, and the introduction of the werewolves, along with the possibility for other supernaturals, would dovetail nicely into solving them. Would you read a new spin-off series featuring one of the Children of the Moon as a protagonist? Do you want to see more world building within the world of Twilight? And if there were to be other paranormal beings, what would you like to see included? Sound off in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and happy reading.